Thank you for your warm welcome. It's been a year since I was originally scheduled to be with you in person. I've been thinking of you all. This year, difficult for so many of us, so much loss. My heart and prayers join with yours over all the losses and changes. But we look ahead with hope. Let's listen with fresh ears to this familiar teaching story by Rumi, The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. I'm back living in the house I grew up in. I have known my next door neighbor on one side since childhood. My newer neighbors on the other side had only been there for 21 years. Not so long ago, my newer neighbors moved, so their house was empty. And my older neighbor had a health crisis, went into a rehab facility, and her return was uncertain. At the same time, I noticed that the commercial property behind my house was also suddenly empty. I kind of freaked out. I was a combination of afraid and angry. I felt both vulnerable and protective of my neighborhood. I realized that quite literally, the circumstances around me were out of my control. I don't get stuck in emotions often, but I found that I was stuck in fear. Steeped in this emotional stew, I visited a woman on hospice care. She was thin and pale, but she greeted me with a big smile and a sparkle in her eye. In the course of our conversation, I noted she seemed more upbeat. She said, "I'm doing okay today. Not great, but okay. But I decided if I'm not going to be happy now, when am I going to be happy?" As I left her, I thought, nothing is certain about what surrounds me, but I really am okay. And if I'm not going to be happy now, when will I be happy? A switch had flipped in me. The trickster circumstances of my situation had not changed, but this momentary awareness changed me. The learning for me was to put things in perspective with lightness of heart. I accepted that my insecurity was making me miserable, that I couldn't do anything about the circumstances, and that I really was all right. I love paradox, living in a world of possibility rather than certainty, as long as it's on a cosmic or cultural scale or up on a movie screen, and not in my life. I often do not appreciate it when the trickster archetype pops up in my life. Trickster figures are found in all cultures and either play tricks or otherwise disobey normal rules of behavior, eventually resulting in a positive outcome. I love trickster characters up on the screen. The absurd satire of the Marx Brothers. Groucho Marx is one of my favorite philosophers. Their backward logic ridicules fascism, warmongering, and polite high society. Mel Brooks movies aren't just funny, they are aggressive and subversive, making us laugh when we should be offended. Brooks is a genius of comic anarchy, especially when his stories literally break through their own storyline, as they do in the hilarious last scene of Blazing Saddles. The characters rampage right through the movie set, then through the studio back lot, and onto the streets of LA. I get a kick out of the fact that we do not really know why we celebrate April Fool's Day. Perhaps its origin has to do with the change to the calendar in 1582, when New Year's Day shifted from April 1st back to January 1st. Perhaps we in the Northern Hemisphere must have a holiday at this time of year. We are giddy with the days lengthening, signaling a time of new life. It occurs to me that the new life energy of April Fool's Day in the spring is a perfect bookend to Mischief Night, the night before Halloween. Mischief Night and April Fool's Day are both traditions of casting off reason and good behavior. So you can see that I do have an appreciation for upheaval. I knew I needed to reconcile my appreciation of productive chaos out there with my discomfort of it in my own life. And I needed to learn how and why archetypes show up in our life and how to cope with them when they do. During the pandemic, I finally took the time for a long delayed study of Carl Jung, archetypes, and unconscious images in dreams, daydreams, and in life circumstances. I've been learning more about the archetypes, the hero, the mother, the exile, the trickster, and so many more. Now I'm working to build a bridge between knowledge and understanding in my experience with them. Carl Jung wrote, "The archetype is a readiness to produce over and over again the same or similar mythical ideas. When an archetype appears in a dream, in a fantasy, or in life, it brings with it a certain power. It can impel us to action." My dream work teacher from Divinity School, Jeremy Taylor, said, "The archetypes reveal themselves in repeating patterns of energy, form, and symbol, visible throughout history and to us now. It is not so much that the archetypes are in us as it is that we who are surrounded by and immersed in the archetypes. They influence us in both our interior and exterior experiences on a daily basis. We live and act them out, repeating the same recognizable mythic themes in our individual and collective lives. There's that reference to the mythic again. Myths are the endless stories that influence our lives. They're a set of stories, rituals, and customs that give a sense of meaning and direction to a person, a family, community, or culture. The Star Wars franchise has a valid mythological perspective. It shows the state as a machine and asks, is the machine going to crush humanity or serve humanity? It's a battle between dictatorship and democracy. I think their Death Star and cyborg soldiers are a giveaway about who the bad guys are. Joseph Campbell points out that when the hero figure, Luke Skywalker, unmasks his father, Darth Vader, he's taking off the machine role that the father played, the role of power and of the state, which used the dark side of the Force to manipulate by fear and aggression. That's a mythic theme. Jung said the most important question that we can ask ourselves is, what myth am I living? Because we all unconsciously act out these myths that society gives us. And another layer to the storyline of our life imposed on us by our culture is the elaborate system of family myths that we inherit. Stories and rituals that are passed down and differentiate our own family from other families. The alarm I felt when I lost all of my immediate neighbors at once may have been my living out a family myth. My family has always placed a high value on neighbors and community. To be without any was unthinkable. And who populates myths? Archetypes. They are the characters and situations not only of ancient mythology, but of our own lives, here and now. The archetypes require human lives, individual acts and experiences. Archetypal energy wants to reach us, and most often comes through images. These images may come to us through a movie, dream, a fairy tale, song, memory, a poem, painting, or through another person. Archetypes sound a bit esoteric, but we all know how to read them. Imagine you are people watching, wherever you usually people watch. At the airport, we're not doing that much anymore, or at a coffee shop, or sitting on your front porch. So you're people watching, and you see a perfect mother walk by. In one word or phrase, name a characteristic or quality of that perfect mother. Caring, nurturer, holds the child's hand, attentive, not on their phone. These are the qualities of the mother archetype. Here's another one. This person came to my rescue. They were such a hero to me. In one word or phrase, name a characteristic of that hero. Strong, focused on my problem, empathic, kind, willing to sacrifice to help others, brave. You just read the archetype of the hero. Since archetypes are potential energy, there's no way to capture them fully. An image of the mother archetype cannot fully express all that is the mother. A nurturing mother, a controlling or limiting mother. Same archetype. It's contrast that makes archetypes dynamic, complex, and compelling. If something has only a good side, it's not an archetype. Or more accurately, it's not yet perceived through an archetypal lens. So each archetype has its own spectrum of expression. For the trickster, sometimes he manifests as an image, person, or situation that's humorous, ingenious, or easygoing. And he shifts our understanding, helping us to see from afar rather than being swept away by the drama. At other times, the trickster is definitely not funny. Rather, he's sarcastic, harsh, brooding, or drunk, not lightening things up, but driving home his message in a heavy-handed way. Sometimes different qualities in a spectrum of an archetype become their own archetypes. The trickster, for instance, is also known as the fool, coyote, the joker, and the comic. They each have their own distinct energy and purpose. It's important for us to know of the trickster archetype because he has made and will make many more uninvited visits into our life. His usual purpose is to awaken a soul. He turns our lives upside down, generally to our dismay and bewilderment. The trickster punctures our complacency when we are too sure, too proud, or have gotten off track with our purpose. He is never predictable and often has a sly humor which seems to imply, don't take yourself so seriously. Usually the trickster enters and leaves a life quickly. We may be left flat on our backs, wondering what hit us and why. Later, we may be able to look back and see how a seeming disaster gave us a needed gift or change of direction. Looking back at my trickster situation, I believe the woman I visited who helped me to find a new perspective was the mother archetype. She was wise, calm, in control of herself, holding both hope and acceptance. And we each embody and live out our own primary archetypes. I believe my primary archetype is the sage. It's a little embarrassing to say that, but I do believe that my primary archetype is the sage. Someone who seeks knowledge, but especially understanding and a felt sense of knowing. The resolution of my situation was quite trickster-like. My older next-door neighbor eventually came home from rehab and is still doing well. A young couple moved in on the other side of me, and they are wonderful neighbors. The trickster shook up my own life. Within a year, I left hospice chaplaincy to become a minister of pastoral care in Concord, Massachusetts. But I kept my house in Connecticut and rented a house there. So pay attention to the trickster when he comes. The trickster is on our side. Ignoring him is a dangerous business because trickster's purpose is to open us up to life layers of insight so that a deeper message can come through. That is why I think of the trickster as divine. He's a way of getting in touch with that mysterious something that connects us with all that is through space and through time. The trickster or the fool points out flaws that causes us to question, not to accept things blindly. They usually appear when we, as individuals or as a culture, are at or near boundaries or a time of transition. But then, doesn't most learning come during times of transition? When have you noticed the trickster afoot in your life? When has the trickster visited you? How did you react? The childlike symbol of the fool is a symbol of the human soul, the spark of life that reincarnates again and again until it awakens to itself. Reincarnation is the secret key of the Fool. Like a child whose awareness is limited to the present moment, the Fool moves from moment to moment or life to life without analyzing what has gone before or what might come in the future. It's the Fool that urges us away from stagnation toward enlightenment and transformation without fear of the future. Whenever there is change, the Fool in us is reborn. As Jungian analyst Marie van Franz reminds us, every time a human being makes real progress in consciousness, for them, the whole world has changed. Their outlook changes. In this way, there is complete rebirth of the world. In Dickens' A Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge dances down the street after his time with the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. He sings, "I don't know what day it is. I don't know how long I've been with the spirits. I don't know anything. I'm quite a baby." There is a resurrection for us when we see the world anew. Part of the resurrection theme of this season is how Jesus, a Jewish man, often took on the role of the trickster. Jesus tricks his adversaries because he is the answer in the way that he embodies love of God and love of neighbor. And Jesus does it by pulling down all the pretense of religiosity, righteousness, and smug self-assurance. He's subversive in transforming those around him by overcoming the powers based on hatred, bigotry, and fear. We can become the tricksters of our time in our own way, acting as an equalizer between people and situations, loving our neighbor as ourself, standing with our neighbor when others attempt to harm or devalue them, or to seek control over the poor, the weak, and the voiceless. It's the role of the trickster to teach and to awaken us to who we are or who we need to be now. The trickster makes us grow, whether we want to or not. May we be changed by the divine trickster in our deep struggles. When faced with what we fear the most, when called to be a compassionate neighbor, even if it is out of our comfort zone. Along with Harry Meserve, we pray. From arrogance, pompousness, and taking ourselves too seriously, may the saving grace of humor liberate us. From making war and calling it peace, special privilege and calling it justice, polluting and calling it progress, may we be cured. Foretelling ourselves that evil is inevitable, while good is impossible, may we stand corrected. O God of our mixed up, paradoxical, aspiring, doubting, and insurgent lives, help us to be as open-hearted as we have always wanted to be. May it be so.